My straight best friend lost his memory, but still remembered our song gay love story. Hello everyone, and welcome back. If you enjoy emotional gay love stories with romance, powerful twists, and unforgettable endings, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. And before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We love seeing viewers from all over the world. Thank you for being here. Now let's dive into today's story. I do not know who you are. Those were the first words Mason Reed said to me after 15 years of friendship, and somehow they hurt more than anything I had prepared myself to hear. I stood beside his hospital bed holding 2 cups of coffee, one black for me and one with exactly 2 packets of sugar for him, because after knowing someone that long, you stop thinking about the little things you remember. You just remember them. Mason looked healthy enough under the soft morning light coming through the window, but his expression changed when he saw me. There was no recognition in his eyes, no familiar smile, no quiet joke about my terrible choice of jacket, just polite confusion. "My name is Ethan Carter," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "We have been friends since we were 10. Mason glanced toward the coffee in my hand. "That is a long time." "Yeah, it is." I placed his cup on the table beside him. He looked at it, then at me. 2 sugars. I froze. "You remember that?" He shook his head. "No. It just looks right." That should have made me hopeful. Instead, it made everything stranger. I showed him photographs on my phone, and he studied them like pictures from somebody else's life. In almost every photo, we were standing beside each other. Mason smiled at one from a summer trip to Lake Michigan. "We look happy." We were. I almost said more. I almost told him that I had spent years loving him quietly because Mason had always been straight, and being his best friend had felt safer than risking everything for a truth he might never return. But this was not the moment to give him a burden he could not even remember choosing. When visiting hours ended, I picked up my coat and walked toward the door. My chest felt strangely hollow. My hand was already on the door when I heard it. Mason was humming 4 soft notes, then 4 more. I stopped breathing. It was the melody we had played on every road trip since college. The song Mason jokingly started calling our song years ago. I slowly turned around. He was still humming, staring toward the window as if the melody had arrived without permission. "Mason," I whispered. He stopped and looked at me. "What? Where did you learn that song?" His eyebrows pulled together. "I do not know." I stepped closer, my heartbeat suddenly loud in my ears. "You do not remember me." "No. You do not remember the trips we took or the places in those pictures." He shook his head again. "Then why do you remember that melody?" Mason stared at me for several long seconds. His confusion slowly gave way to something softer, something I had seen 1,000 times before but never understood. "I do not know, Ethan," he said quietly. Then his eyes widened slightly, because I had never told him my name a second time. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Mason looked almost as startled as I felt, as though my name had escaped his mouth before his mind could decide whether it belonged there. The way he had said Ethan had sounded different from the careful politeness he had used all morning. It had sounded familiar. The next afternoon, Mason was cleared to leave the hospital with instructions to rest, keep his routine simple, and avoid putting pressure on himself to recover memories on command. His older sister, Claire, had planned to take him home, but a work emergency pulled her away, so I offered to drive. In the parking lot, he stopped beside my blue SUV before I unlocked it. "This one is yours," he said. I stared at him. "How did you know?" Mason looked around at the rows of cars. "Lucky guess." It was not a very convincing answer. He climbed into the passenger seat and immediately reached toward the air vent, turning it away from his face. He had always hated air blowing directly at him. I said nothing. 10 minutes later, I stopped at a coffee shop we had visited hundreds of times. I ordered my usual black coffee and asked Mason what he wanted. He studied the menu for nearly a minute. "I have no idea. Try a vanilla latte." His eyes narrowed. "Do I like those?" "You complain they are too sweet, then finish mine." For the first time since I had walked into his hospital room, Mason laughed. It was brief, but it was his laugh, warm and effortless, and hearing it nearly broke something open inside me. "Apparently old me was annoying," he said. "Extremely. And you stayed friends with me?" "For 15 years. He looked at me differently after that. Less like he was studying someone he had been told to trust, and more like he was trying to understand why he already did. At his apartment, I unlocked the door with the spare key he had given me 3 years earlier. Mason paused when he saw it. You have a key to my place? You gave it to me. Why? Because you lose yours constantly. He smiled, but his eyes remained thoughtful. I opened a cabinet to get him a glass. Before I could reach the second shelf, Mason pointed to the left. Your mug is up there. My hand stopped. Behind two plain white cups sat a dark green ceramic mug with a tiny chip near the handle. Mine. I had left it there months earlier because I spent so many mornings at Mason's apartment that carrying it home seemed pointless. How did you know that? I asked. Mason stared at the mug. I do not know. Then Mason opened the refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of iced tea, and automatically grabbed a second drink for me before stopping halfway. You hate this brand, he said. I felt my heartbeat quicken. Yes. How do I know that? I had no answer. Mason set the bottle down and looked directly at me. Ethan, everyone keeps telling me what I forgot. His voice became quieter. But nobody has explained why the things I still know are all about you. I had been asking myself the same question, but any answer I gave risked turning his confusion into pressure. So I did the most difficult thing I could think of. I stopped asking him to remember. For the next several days, I helped Mason rebuild a routine instead. Halfway through the produce section, he reached into my cart, removed the bananas I had chosen, and replaced them with greener ones. Those will be mushy tomorrow, he said. Then he froze. I looked at the bananas, then at him. You have been criticizing my banana selection since college. Mason shook his head with an embarrassed smile. Please do not make this another mystery. I was going to say thank you. You have never thanked me for anything that politely. I laughed before realizing what he had just said. Mason realized it too. Neither of us mentioned it. The waitress recognized him and placed 2 menus on the table. Before I sat down, Mason moved automatically toward the booth facing the window, then stopped and offered that side to me. You like watching the street, he said. Apparently. He rubbed his forehead. That came out like I knew it. Maybe you do. Mason looked outside. That is the strange part. I do not see a memory when these things happen. I just know what feels right. I arrived at Mason's apartment carrying groceries and found him standing by the door with an umbrella already open. You always forget yours, he said. I looked at the umbrella. It was mine, an old navy one I had left in his hall closet sometime last spring. You remembered that too? No. He gave me a frustrated look. I saw the rain and thought Ethan will forget his umbrella. Then I wondered how I even knew you were the kind of person who forgets umbrellas. I took it from him. For the record, I remembered groceries. A historic achievement. There it was again. His old rhythm. His old teasing. For half a second, it felt as if nothing had changed. Then he looked at me with the uncertainty of someone meeting me for the first time, and the illusion disappeared. That evening, we cooked pasta together. Mason chose the music while I worked at the stove. He skipped through several songs without reaction. Then the familiar melody from the hospital began. His hand stopped above his phone. I turned around slowly. Mason did not look frightened this time. He looked almost peaceful. Ethan, he said, come here. I walked over. On the screen was a song he did not remember downloading, saved in a playlist created almost 4 years earlier. The playlist contained dozens of tracks, but this one had been played more than any other. Mason stared at the play count. I still cannot remember where we heard it, he said. Neither can I exactly. We started playing it on road trips years ago. He looked at me. That is not what I mean. What do you mean? Mason pressed his hand lightly against his chest. Every time I hear it, I feel like I am waiting for you to say something. My throat tightened. What? His eyes stayed on mine. Something you never said. I knew exactly what I had never said, and for one dangerous second, I wondered whether Mason somehow knew too. But standing in his kitchen while he searched my face for an answer, I could not turn his missing memories into an opportunity for myself. Maybe there are a lot of things we never said, I told him. Mason watched me for another moment, then lowered the volume. That sounded suspiciously careful. I am trying not to influence what you remember. Everyone keeps saying that. He leaned against the counter. Maybe I am tired of trying to remember. That surprised me. He wanted one day when nobody expected his past to appear. So the following Saturday, instead of taking him somewhere meaningful, I asked where he wanted to go. Mason chose a lakeside park neither of us had visited before. We bought sandwiches from a food truck and walked along the water beneath a bright September sky. Mason asked about my job as a graphic designer, my terrible habit of staying awake past midnight, and why I owned 3 nearly identical gray hoodies. I asked whether he still hated running. Absolutely, he said. Good. Some things are permanent. He laughed, and the sound came easier now. We sat on a bench about 20 feet from the water. A family nearby was flying a red kite, and Mason watched it climb into the wind. This is strange, he said. What is? I am supposed to be getting to know you again, but it does not feel like meeting someone new. I looked down at my coffee. What does it feel like? Like walking into a room I have never seen and somehow knowing where the light switch is. I did not know what to say to that. On the drive home, Claire called and invited Mason to stay with her for a few days. She worried that he was spending too much time alone. Mason thanked her, then surprised both of us by saying, Ethan is helping me. After the call ended, I kept my eyes on the road. You could stay with Claire. She is family. I know. You trust her. I do. He paused. But I trust you too. My hands tightened slightly around the steering wheel. You barely remember me. That is the problem. I glanced at him. Mason was watching me with an expression that was becoming increasingly familiar, even if he could not remember why. My head does not remember you, he continued, but everything else seems to. When I finally stood to leave, Mason walked me to the door. Ethan, yeah. Today was the first day I did not feel like something was missing. I swallowed. That is good. It was because you stopped trying to give me my old life back. He hesitated, then smiled softly. Maybe I do not need to remember every reason I chose you as my best friend. My chest tightened at the word friend. Then Mason added, maybe I just need the chance to choose you again. Mason's words followed me home, and I spent most of that night staring at the ceiling, wondering whether choosing someone twice could mean the same thing both times. 3 days later, he called while I was working and asked if I could help organize old files on his laptop. He needed insurance documents and work records, but every folder had become another collection of names and dates that meant nothing to him. That evening, we sat at his kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee and worked through years of digital clutter. I was an exciting person, he said. You spent 2 weeks deciding on that chair. Did I buy it? I pointed toward the living room. You were sitting 10 feet away from it. He laughed, and we kept going. Near the bottom of an old folder, I noticed a collection of audio files transferred from Mason's previous phone. One file name stopped me. September road trip. The date was almost 4 years earlier. Mason noticed my expression. What is that? A recording from one of our trips. Play it. I hesitated. Ethan, you promised you would stop deciding what I should remember. He was right. I clicked the file. Wind and road noise filled the kitchen, followed by my younger voice complaining that Mason had missed another turn. Mason laughed at the recording. Apparently, I was also terrible at navigation. You still are? I am willing to consider that medically confirmed. Then the familiar melody began faintly through the car speakers. My recorded voice became quieter. This song again. You like it, Mason's voice answered. You are the one who keeps playing it. Maybe I have a reason. Sitting beside me in the present, Mason stopped smiling. The recording continued. I heard myself ask what the reason was. There was a long pause, filled only by tires against pavement and music in the background. Then Mason's younger voice said, there is something I need to tell you, but not while I am driving. My stomach tightened. I did not remember that conversation. On the recording, I laughed nervously and asked if he had gotten someone pregnant. Mason groaned and told me to stop being ridiculous. Then he said, much more softly, it is about you, Ethan. The file ended. Neither of us moved. Mason clicked it again, checking the progress bar as if another 30 seconds might somehow appear. Nothing did. What happened after that? He asked. I honestly do not remember. You do not remember what I told you? No. I could not remember Mason finishing that conversation. He leaned back, visibly unsettled. Maybe I never said it. I tried to smile. You always were good at changing the subject. Mason did not smile back. Instead, he replayed the final seconds once more. It is about you, Ethan. Then he looked at me. Whatever I was going to say, I was scared. How can you tell? Because I know what my voice sounds like when I am scared. He closed the laptop slowly. And I think that is why the song feels different. I waited. Mason's eyes held mine. I do not think I remember the song, Ethan. I think I remember how I felt when I was sitting beside you. That sentence changed everything. Mason wanted to find out. The next morning, he asked me to drive the route from the old recording. We followed the lakeshore north. Beneath a pale blue sky, I kept the radio off until Mason reached for my phone. He found the familiar song and pressed play. Then Mason suddenly looked toward my right hand resting near the center console. "I wanted to hold your hand," he said. I nearly missed the next turn. "What?" I do not remember doing it. His brow tightened with concentration. "Actually, I think I did not do it. I remember wanting to." My mouth went dry. "When?" "I have no idea." He closed his eyes for several seconds, listening. "You were talking about someone." A cold knot formed in my stomach. "Someone? A guy?" Mason opened his eyes. "Daniel." I had not heard that name in years. Daniel had been someone I dated briefly around the time of that road trip. It had lasted less than 2 months. "You remember Daniel?" "No. I remember hating his name." "You barely knew him." "That does not make this less confusing." Mason stared out the windshield. "Did I dislike everyone you dated?" "You found something wrong with most of them." "What was wrong with Daniel?" "According to you, he talked too much." "Did he?" "Absolutely, but that is not the point." Mason smiled faintly, then became serious again. "I remember waiting for you once." "Where?" "Outside somewhere. At night." He pressed his fingers against his temple. "You came toward the car smiling, and I remember being relieved. Then you told me you had a good time, and suddenly I was not relieved anymore." "Why would that matter to me?" he asked. I kept my eyes on the road. "I cannot answer that for you. You knew me for 15 years. You must have an opinion." "An opinion is not a memory." Mason turned toward me. "Ethan, I keep remembering feelings I do not understand. I knew your coffee. I knew your habits. I remembered wanting your hand before I remembered where we were going. I remembered being jealous of a man I cannot even picture." I could hear the frustration beneath his words. "And every time that song plays, I feel like I was about to lose something because I was too afraid to say what I wanted." We reached the small lakeside diner from the recording shortly before noon. Mason stepped out of the SUV and stopped beside me. His gaze moved from the diner to the water and then back to my face. Something softened in his expression. "There is one more thing," he said. "What?" I do not remember saying it. I just remember thinking it. I waited. Mason took a slow breath. "Whatever you were to me, I was terrified somebody else was going to become more important to you than I was." Beside the lake, I realized protecting Mason from the past had become another way of hiding from the truth. "There is something I should have told you earlier," I said. Mason waited. "Before all of this, you always told me you were straight." His expression barely changed at first. Then he looked toward the water. "Always. As long as I knew you." "Did I date women?" "Yes." "Seriously?" "A few times." He nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "And you?" "I am gay." He looked back at me. "I know." My heart stumbled. "You remember that?" "No. Claire mentioned it when she was telling me about our friends." He paused. "But that is not the thing you were afraid to tell me, is it?" I said nothing, which was answer enough. We went inside the diner and took a booth near the window. Mason did not open his menu. He simply waited until I finally found the courage I should have found years earlier. "I had feelings for you," I said. The words felt strangely small after carrying them for so long. "For how long?" "Years." Mason stared at me. "And I did not know?" "No." "Why did you never tell me?" I gave a quiet laugh without any humor. "Because you were my best friend. Because you were straight. Because having you in my life felt better than telling you the truth and risking losing you." His gaze dropped to the table. "So while I was getting jealous of Daniel, you were hiding this from me?" "I did not know you were jealous. You complained about everyone. I thought that was just you being protective." "Maybe I thought that too." Then Mason asked the question I had been dreading. "Do you still feel that way?" I looked at him. I could not lie anymore. "Yes." His eyes softened, but I continued before either of us could mistake honesty for permission. "That is why I have been careful. You cannot remember the life in which you decided who you were. I will not use these missing pieces to tell you what you feel now." Mason leaned back. "You think I am confused. I think you deserve time. Those are not the same thing." "Maybe not." "Ethan, I did not choose to remember your coffee. I did not choose to feel jealous when I remembered Daniel. I did not choose to hear that song and feel like I was supposed to tell you something." His voice remained gentle, but there was certainty beneath it. "Those feelings came back before almost anything else." "I know." "Then stop treating them like they are less real because I cannot explain them yet." I looked down at my hands. "I am trying to protect you." "Maybe. But maybe you are also protecting yourself." Mason reached across the table, stopping his hand just short of mine. He did not touch me. He left the choice between us. You keep telling me I used to say I was straight, he said quietly. What if the man in that recording was already beginning to understand that the word did not explain everything he felt? My throat tightened. Mason glanced toward the parking lot, then back at me. What if I was already trying to choose you? Mason's hand remained on the table, only inches from mine, and I could feel how easy it would be to close that distance. Instead, I told him the truth. If you were trying to choose me, I wish I had noticed. Mason gave me a small, sad smile. Maybe I wish I had been braver. After lunch, neither of us wanted to drive home immediately. We walked along the narrow path behind the diner toward the lake. The September air was cool enough that I zipped my jacket, and Mason laughed under his breath. What? Nothing. He looked toward the water. I just knew you were going to do that. We reached a weathered wooden bench facing the shoreline. Mason stopped so suddenly that I nearly walked into him. His face had gone still. We sat here. My heartbeat quickened. On that trip? I think so. He lowered himself onto the bench and stared across the water. I sat beside him without speaking. Then, somewhere behind us, music drifted from the diner's outdoor speakers. The melody. Our melody. Mason closed his eyes. I wanted to stop the song, but before I could move, he whispered, "Wait." His breathing slowed. I remember the car. I remember telling you there was something I needed to say. I stayed completely still. Then we came here after lunch. His voice became softer. You sat exactly where you were sitting now. He opened his eyes and looked at my hands. I kept thinking that if I reached over and held your hand, I would have to admit why I wanted to. I remember that. I whispered. You told me you were overthinking something. Mason nodded. I was. He looked down at the space between us. I had spent months telling myself I was just protective of you. Then you started dating Daniel. Every time you mentioned him, I felt like I was watching someone take a place beside you that I thought belonged to me. My throat tightened. Mason, I did not understand what that meant. I had spent my whole life assuming I was straight. You were the first person who made that certainty feel incomplete. The memories seemed to arrive in pieces, each one changing his expression. You asked me what I wanted to tell you. I remembered the moment now. My phone had buzzed before Mason answered. Daniel had sent me a message asking about dinner the following weekend. I had smiled at the screen and told Mason things with Daniel might actually be going somewhere. Mason had looked toward the lake and said he had forgotten what he wanted to say. You did not forget, I said. No. His eyes met mine. I lost my nerve. The song continued quietly behind us. Mason swallowed. That night, after I dropped you off, I sat in my car and played this song again. I decided that the next time we took that drive, I would tell you the truth. What truth? I asked, even though my heart already knew. Mason reached across the bench and gently took my hand. This time, I did not pull away. That I did not know what label fit me anymore, he said. But I knew I was falling in love with my best friend. I sat beside him with my hand in his and forgot how to speak. Mason smiled nervously. You look terrified. I have been in love with you for years. Give me a minute. His smile disappeared, replaced by something warm and almost disbelieving. You still are? Yes. I took a breath. But I need you to understand something. Remembering what you felt 4 years ago does not mean you owe me anything now. Mason looked down at our joined hands. Ethan, that memory explains the past. It does not make this decision for me. What decision? He looked at me. I chose to call you when I was confused. I chose to spend Saturday with you. I chose to trust you when almost everyone felt unfamiliar. I did those things without remembering why you mattered. His thumb moved gently across the back of my hand. Maybe the old me was falling in love with you. The person sitting here now is getting there all over again. I laughed softly because otherwise I might have cried. Mason laughed too, and suddenly the years between what we had been and what we might become did not feel impossible anymore. We made new routines beside the old ones. Wednesday dinners became ours again. He still complained about my bananas. I still forgot my umbrella. And the green mug stayed in his kitchen. One Friday evening, Mason asked me to drive to the lake. We returned to the same bench just before sunset. He brought coffee, mine black and his with 2 sugars. You remembered, I said. I never forgot that one. We sat watching the lights spread across the water. After a while, Mason took out his phone and played our song. I smiled. Still trying to recover something? He shook his head. No, I already remembered the part one needed. He turned toward me. I wanted to come here because the last time I sat on this bench, I was too scared to tell you what I felt. And now I know something I did not know then. What is that? I do not need the perfect label before I am allowed to be honest about one person. He reached for my hand. I love you, Ethan. Some of that feeling belongs to memories I got back. Some of it belongs to everything that happened after I forgot. I do not think the difference matters anymore. My eyes burned, but I smiled. It does not. Mason leaned closer, slowly enough to give me every chance to move away. I did not. Our first kiss was gentle and brief, followed by the kind of silence that did not need to be filled. When we separated, Mason rested his forehead lightly against mine and laughed. Was I supposed to remember doing that too? No, I said. That one was new. Whenever our song came on, he always smiled before the first few notes were over. I once asked him if he finally remembered exactly when it became our song. Mason shook his head, took my hand, and gave me the answer I would carry forever. No, but I remember why it was ours. And I know why it still is.